This video is all about some practical insight, some ideas, some thinking behind when we take a bilateral, 2-arm or 2-leg exercise, and then we're seeking to progress it into a unilateral variation of the same exercise where you're using 1 arm, 1 leg, what have you. And there are some really obvious things that happen when we make that jump from a 2-legged squat, we'll say, to a 1-legged squat. The first thing that happens, and these are just the obvious ones, is an increase in weight that you're having to push or move on every repetition. So when you're splitting the amount of weight evenly between 2 legs, that's a very manageable variation. But now when you move into a single leg variation, now I'm asking 1 leg to essentially take on almost twice the load as the 2-leg variation. And that introduction of intensity is just too much, okay? It's just the way fitness is. And your body hasn't had a chance to build the strength and have the exposure to the stimulus enough to know that, oh, I can handle this. So that is really what fitness is. We're constantly practicing more progressively difficult variations, introducing a new stimulus to jolt the system, challenge the body, create an adaptation, create efficiency. In other words, you get good at it, becomes second nature. It demands less energy to do what you're doing. But when you move from a bilateral exercise to a unilateral exercise, the load is often too much. So we've got to factor that in. How do we assist the exercise, reduce the load to make it more palatable so that we can actually work through a range of motion and eventually wean ourselves off of that assistance into the real deal? We have to factor in that you've gone from 2 points of contact, whether it's your feet or your arms, whether you're hanging, whatever you're doing, 2 points of contact to 1. So you're reducing your base of support to 1 leg, and this is a really good example. So me standing like this is very mindless. This takes nothing for me to stand like this, remain stable and still. But now all of a sudden, when I get onto 1 leg, I feel things moving, I feel my feet constantly recalibrating. Everything is just working a little bit harder to maintain this position. My hips are engaged, so all these stabilizing muscles get called upon. That with that bilateral stimulus, it's not that they're not working, it's just that we've increased the demand, and now I'm asking them, hey, get involved. Help keep me still, help me manage this exercise, help me get me through this range of motion. So the balance, the coordination are huge when it comes to moving from a bilateral to a unilateral exercise. Really simple ways that we can make that transition is by reducing the balance challenge, reducing the coordination challenge, reducing the range of motion, and decreasing the amount of weight that we're asking that single leg or that single arm to deal with on every repetition. And then from there, we just gradually, again, wean ourselves off of, the assistance until we've arrived at full ownership of, let's say, a full single leg squat, where our body now understands that we've gone through the right steps to make that happen. So with a single leg squat, there's a bunch of different ways that you can really regress the exercise and make it more manageable for you. I've got gymnastics rings here. I love this variation because, 1, the rings aren't fixed, so you're still having this balance challenge, but you can use this opposite side arm to help guide you and reduce that weight lowering to the bottom of the squat. So it's an excellent variation to get you used to what a single leg squat feels like. Now, if you don't have rings, that's fine. Imagine this was a doorway, anything that you can grab onto to help you. You could use 2 arms, you could use 1 arm. A lot of it is what feels natural to you. Okay? So I could use this chair. You know, I could use the top of the chair to hold on to in different ways. I could use this side of the chair where maybe I'm able to lower myself down without assistance to a certain point. Now all of a sudden I need to use my elbow and help myself out of the bottom of the squat. There's 100 different ways you can do it. The idea is that you're providing assistance so that you can make the exercise more manageable. Now with regard to range of motion, one of the reasons that I coach and teach you guys about reducing the range of motion is because you'll find there's a drastic difference between, you know, lowering my butt down to this chair and even lowering my butt, we'll say an additional maybe 4 to 5 inches. So just 4 to 5 inches difference between that chair and the top of this parallel bar, using the same exercise, can change everything. It can make this variation compared to that can be impossible. And it's 4 inches. So range of motion has a huge influence early on when you're learning certain exercises. So just be aware of that. Start with a manageable range of motion. Train that, develop strength, efficiency with that, and then gradually increase the range of motion until you're at what we would call a fuller range of motion, okay? So other exercises, we're talking about squats there, but other exercises, you can apply the same concepts. So I was gonna kneel down there, but you know, for a push-up, the reason we go hands up is because we're reducing that load, we're reducing the demand on the core, and through the midsection to maintain body position for the push-up, okay? So there's a reduction in weight / load compared to the full 2-arm push-up on the floor. And this variation right here introduces a higher demand for the midsection to try to keep body position, which some people just aren't ready for. And that's fine, because you can work from the chair push-up to the floor push-up, and eventually move into other variations of the push-up in keeping the theme of bilateral to unilateral, where now the 2-arm push-up is getting easy. We've added a backpack with weight. Okay, we work that. Okay, that's gotten too easy. Now you kind of reach a point where you're at a fork in the road. I can add more weight to the same exercise, which is not wrong. Or I could just start to dabble a little bit with, okay, what does a unilateral or a single arm push-up start to feel like? And so you can start to play around with different variations to introduce your body to one arm, one side of the body doing the work. So one of the ways we can do that is with this hand sliding push-up. If I was out on a harder surface, I would use a towel underneath my hand to slide out. And you're gonna find right away that this is much more difficult, both from an upper body pushing perspective in your arm and your chest, but also through here. Stabilizing your body with only 3 points of contact, one arm doing the work, other arm up in the front, increases the, we'll call it the core, the torso demand of the exercise exponentially. All of a sudden, this push-up, which might not feel like you're doing much, moving into this becomes an upper body strength training exercise, but it also becomes an incredible core exercise. And so the benefit of unilateral training is that you can train the right and left side individually in an isolated fashion. And a lot of the things that we do in daily life, they're not always 2 arms. A lot of it is single arm, single leg. And so working those variations has awesome carryover into daily living, but the single arm variations increases the load, the demand for balance, stability, coordination. And then when you come back to like a loaded 2-arm push-up, for lack of better description, it almost feels like child's play. Like it's non-factor. You know what I mean? You can add more weight to it, but you're like, I've already done the single arm with a single leg variation. This just feels ridiculously easy, which in my world is like awesome, because now you've made incredible progress. Your body understands how to handle itself in space using one leg versus always needing 2 legs. So just real quickly, I'm already carrying on here, but other things that you can do, other exercises. So we've talked about, see if I can get this over here, the body row, inverted row, and the rings are a little high here, but you can get the idea. So this is the 2-arm variation, okay? I can extend my legs to make it harder, put my legs up on an object, piece of furniture, chair, box, to make it harder. I can add weight to this same exercise to make it harder. Or, at some point I can say, well, why don't I try out a single arm pull variation, okay? And when you do this, you have to go back to ground zero, or beginner variations, okay? So, knees are going to be bent, reducing the amount of weight, and core challenge on every pull. Now I can work the same variation but with 1 arm. And I can tell you that this is difficult. Compared to this becomes easy. This single arm variation is just a whole other dimension of challenge. So you can also see if I can perform here. So with a 2-arm chin-up, all right, this is a difficult exercise, there's no question. But at some point with consistency, again, the great thing about fitness is that exercises that were once hard, with consistency and practice, they just get easy. It's just the way it is. Your body gets strong, you get that efficiency, you're like, non-factor. Where I was 3 months ago, I'm so much further performance-wise with that lapsing 3 months because I was consistent in practice, followed some progressions, now look where I'm at. So what do? Well, you could add load to the same exercise. You could add reps, more volume, more sets, or you could circle back and give a single arm variation a try, okay? With vertical pulling, you're going to have assistance. There's no question. This is too intense of an exercise to just dive into it. So I have the thickest band I have. I'll wrap this around my knee to really help me get to the top. And so this exercise right here, and it gets a little awkward, but this exercise becomes manageable with the reduction in weight. And if I were to try that without this band, I would just flop around on the bar. So, reduce the weight, make the balance challenge more palatable, make the coordination challenge more palatable. Moving from a bilateral exercise to a unilateral exercise is a shock to the system, but there's ways that you can introduce and pursue those exercises that are, number one, fun and not defeating, not overwhelming, and will allow you to continually make progress without injury and progress into what we will call, for lack of a better description, the real deal of that exercise, whatever it might be. Single leg squat, single leg push-up, single arm pulling, single arm pulling. All of these things, when you know the formula and the path to get there, and kind of how you move up the rungs of the ladder, everything becomes attainable. which is one of the coolest things about fitness, is just applying consistency, some mindfulness, and when you're inside of a workout or you're inside of a work set, you're just giving all of your attention to what you're doing in that moment. And then you're letting your body rest, recover, come back to the next workout, and moving along the continuum of difficulty. And I'm telling you that in 3 months, 6 months, a year, several years, you'll reflect back and you won't even recognize yourself. And it's just from doing the simple things really, really well. So this is a really long-winded video that started about bilateral exercise, moving into unilateral exercises, that turned into a hype video about consistency. But all of it is tied together. I hope this finds you doing well, and we'll talk to you guys soon.